everybody, and welcome back to Rugby with Pads. I'm your host, Sam, and I've been gone for a little while. Sorry about that. You know what? Being a dad of two and having life in the way and loving fantasy football and loving football and having so much going on in your life, sometimes things just get ahead of you. But this here is not the podcast where I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to say sorry. I've been out of your lives for so long, potentially, some of you. And instead, we're going to look forward. But you join us from Rugby with Pads' new headquarters, which happens to be the shed at the bottom of my garden. Newly built, bespoke, not just for the podcast. I do a little bit of, normal work here as well. But we have a new backdrop. We've got some of the Rams greats if you're looking at YouTube. Maybe not less great, Robert Quinn there. But some fancy favourites as well. We're rotating through those guys. So if you watch on YouTube, please look out and comment on your favourite player. But yeah, I'm back. And the elephant in the room is I've been gone for a long time. I'm really sorry about that. But I'm back here in fancy off-season, a bit of no man's land. But you know what? Being the off-season, I've started having these thoughts. Not weird thoughts, but just thoughts about, why we play fantasy football, how we play it, and what's the kind of, what are my learnings over now 10 plus years of playing fantasy football. I feel like I've learned a lot, and I wanted to put them down on paper. This is not my manifesto. This is not my... this is not my masterpiece, but this is a set of musings that I've had over the off season, and we'll start off with where we are right now. Now, for a lot of you picking up, this might be your second, third, fourth season, but for some of you listening to this show, I hope anyway, we've got some new players. And I think one of the biggest parts of fantasy football is finding the right league. And that's what our subject is going to be about today. We're not going to talk about, draft order or anything like that. I know for some of you, drafting may be kind of in the mirror, or not in the mirror, sorry, in the near future. For me, I'm currently drafting on my third screen over there. As you can see, very slow auction draft. But I think what a lot of you are deciding is, what do you want out of fantasy football for this next year? Obviously, the main events kicks off in August, September time, when the actual league kicks off. But we're coming up to draft season proper in the NFL, and we want to find out what you want to get out of playing fantasy football. And I've repeated that 3 times because it's so incredibly important. If you want to start playing fantasy football, what does it mean to you? What are your intentions? What are you going to give back? What are you going to get in return? Well, to start with, you just want to get something. You don't necessarily want to give back. But these are questions you'd normally see in a community designed to gatekeep, I think, really. They're asking for more, a more way, but really in fantasy football, and for me, especially my experience of fantasy football, especially if you play in the UK as well, it's a community that's growing and wants more people to play and enjoy it and spread the word. I mean, there's a reason you're listening to this podcast after all, hopefully. And ultimately someone asks you, possibly me, to join in, and you've caught the bug. That doesn't mean, though, that fantasy football blanket is right for you in that way. And that's, again, not putting you off, but I think you want to maximize your experience. Not all fantasy football variants are for you. The game is played on a spectrum, from the casual to the ultra invested. On the casual side of things, you have a smaller group, redraft, potentially you pick some, you have a smaller group of redraft players, effectively. On the casual end, you might have an 8-team league. You might pick up some good players. You can tune in once in a while, maybe go in once a week, sort your team out. You never really run into any issues with unavailability of your players. You're not looking at matchup selections too heavily. You're playing along with it for fun. You want to see that player that I drafted do well on Sunday. That's great. It's a great way to watch your players at the weekend, check in on Red Zone, and have some skin in the game for those players that you drafted. It's how I started. I started in an 8-man league, not really knowing the rules, just a redraft. I think I drafted Rodgers 103 or something like that, which was, now looking back on it, is a ludicrous thing to do. You don't pick up quarterbacks in the first round, especially not running one, especially not ones who can't run as well. But I think I picked up Gronk as well in the second round. Yeah, I just wanted to pick players that I wanted to root for. But anyway, the beauty of this kind of league is the low levels of commitment. 16 weeks, you're done. You can bid farewell to your league mates for another 7+ months while the off-season goes on. And that's how most things start. But some people from there get the bug. they've got their home league, they've got the one they can come back to. And that's probably where you build up your closest relationships with people. It's probably where you've got friends, etc., and where you started because you got dragged into that. And funnily enough, those home leagues that they start in are probably some of the most intense. For me, this here, for anyone on YouTube, I'm holding up the Chopper Mandatum Cup, is the most prized possession I have. It has been won by me twice. I won it in 2022, 2023, and last year as well. So got it back after a year's absence. But this home league trophy is the most important thing, aside from my wife and kids and everything else. But yeah, it's very important in terms of fancy. It's really, really very important. I've won other leagues, I've won other titles, I've got other trophies. One's in the background over there. That one's the most important because it's the longest lasting, it's a historic. And even though it's a relatively unintense league, it's 10-man now, we've extended a little bit. It's redraft only. People, it's got a bit of keeper in there. It's got the bragging rights because we've got the history there, and that's what really got me hooked, is having the history in there. And still, it's still a test of the skills and why it remains the most popular format, redraft, because you have to be good at all phases if you want to win. You can get lucky. It's very unlikely. There's a reason why 3 players in our league have won it twice, and some players haven't won it at all. And it is still the most popular format because it's the most, engaging engaging path to entry, I guess I say. Once you get more involved, though, and you get the bug, redraft, there's 7 months of dead time, and that's why people get interested in other formats. Probably the most popular other format and the more intense and involved side of things is Dynasty, however you want to say it. I'm not going to judge over here. I think I'm going to call it Dynasty because I feel like that's more British. Correct me if I'm wrong. For many, it's a year-round format. You get to a point where your roster stays with you and you follow the off-season whispers, track closely the impact of free agency, trades, and even now, that's what I'm doing. That's why I'm doing funny little draft things in the background here. And the news out of real life NFL becomes your fantasy news because you're so invested in those particular players. I mean, I've had players that I've had on my roster for 5 years, and I follow them very intensely. I follow them on Twitter, for goodness sake. X and Instagram. It stretches the format of a really intense 16 weeks. It still have an intense 16 weeks, but it stretches it out over the whole year as well, so you get a little bit extra as well. And this is great if you want to buy more into your players. As I said, I followed a load of them. Be more involved with the storyline aspects of fantasy football, like rivalries and the ebbs and flows of your franchise strength as well. And for many like me, this is where the addiction really begins. And for fantasy football fiends, multiple leagues seem to spawn out of nowhere. Guys, you know who you are. For others, though, there's a whole love of different things as well. For those who love drafting, they get into best ball. Loads of tournaments there. You can enter your team and you don't look at it for the rest of the year. A lot of charities do that great stuff. Scott Fishbowl started that way. The JTT Cup, which I'm part of this year as well. I'm part of the, I guess, Influencers League. I don't know how to. It's very very nice to be picked out of the litter there, but maybe I just answered a message on Twitter. That was the only way to get in. Anyway, there's a load of different ways to do it. If you're really into to drafting, that's a good place to start. For others, the hybrid gambling aspect of daily fantasy sports, there's not many options in the UK, but Fantasy Game Day is really good at that. It is really useful because it really scratches an itch, I guess. Obviously gambling, we're not promoting any of that. But for some of us, it's just the escapism of having something to root for on Sundays. And it's the one uniting factor amongst all these league types that you have. So kind of looping back, and I'm going to make these series of episodes quite short and sharp. The question should be asking is not what you can do for your league, but what your league can do for you. I think that's an Americanism. Maybe it's JFK. Again, tell me if it is. But there's a lot to think about in what you want to get out of fantasy football. And we don't ask it to be rude. We ask it because we want to know where you're going to have the most fun. Thank you for listening to me rabbit on for the last 8 or so minutes. If you like this kind of content, please give it a like, subscribe, all the fun stuff. You can follow me on all the socials at Rugby with Pads. I'm going to get back into that a bit more. You can support the show by getting a subscription to us. It's a Patreon type service at Buy Me a Coffee. If you go to www.rugbywithpads.com, we do merch. You get merch with memberships and kind of stuff. There's all kinds of tiers. Go and have a look at it if you want to support and see more of this, because I want to put more time into this, not less. I'm sorry, I will get more consistent with this. But next time we'll be back with knowing a bit more about your league and league mates and not just your roster. Thank you so much for listening. And I know it's not quite the time for it yet, but I will see you all on the virtual gridiron. Thank you.